She ran for Senate, of course, finished second in that primary with fewer than 20,000 votes, separating her from the winner, Abdul El-Sayed. Thank you very much for being here. Great to have you with us. And the message very much was certainly on the heels of that campaign, unity among the Democratic Party. And I wonder sort of what your life looks like in terms of politicking here in the weeks ahead. Will we see you campaigning with the Democratic nominee here in the days ahead?
Well, I can tell you I'm still in my House position, right? So I'm a Democrat who flipped a long-held Republican seat in 2018. I held the seat in 2020 with Trump on the ballot. It was a district that had voted for him, actually, back in the 16 election. And I'm really focused on the House. You know, I've talked to Democratic House leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, Pete Aguilar, and I am very eager to just flip some of these congressional seats, like Christina Hines in Michigan's 10th district, you know, Congresswoman Hillary Scholten out in Grand Rapids. You know, it's amazing that we've got her leadership out there. And we've got another seat in Michigan's 4th district, you know, Sean McCann. These are good, just middle of the road, common sense Dems. Really excited to be sleeves rolled up alongside them. And the party knows, you know, all the nominees, the whole ticket knows, you know, here in Michigan, I'm going to do whatever they want as I finish out the remainder of my congressional term. And I know that, you know, Abdul, right, we campaigned against one another for a good year and a half. So I don't, you know, maybe he's sick of hearing my voice. I don't know. I'm just kidding around. But you know,
he hasn't asked you to join him. He hasn't made that overture yet.
Look, I'm not trying to drum up drama. I don't, you know, look, we did a big unity breakfast. There was, you know, my friend Keith Williams was there. He's the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus. You know, I'm really proud to, you know, have had his support in my race. But we all know, you know, we're Team Dem. So, you know, they're going to be figuring it out. They've got a quick runway. And I'm not, I think America, truthfully, if I can just speak candidly, I think people here in Michigan and across this country, they are just so sick of this negative, nasty, constant campaigning, butthurt if you don't win. I mean, I've had a great ride. I mean, I honestly, I was 18 years old and knocked doors for the Democratic Party. You know, I was motivated to run because I saw Trump win in 16. I was working in an R&D lab and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there goes the scientific research budget. And so I put up my hand for a long shot run for Congress. I won, you know, I won a 6-way primary, 7,000 votes, similar to this one. Who are those, you know, 15,000, 7,000 people in these, you know, in these primaries? I don't know if I'll ever know, but, you know, I'm proud that my name and my message was out there. I'm proud to be a Democrat. And certainly some of the differences between my former Democratic opponent and they're out there. They're on full display. Everyone knows that what was said in the primary was said. You know, I am a passionate, you know, industrial policy geek Democrat. I'm a Zionist. You know, I'm certainly going to continue to say that loudly and proudly, particularly as I'm leaving the halls of power. And I think that many fellow Zionists in both parties and maybe in that independent column, you know, they've got to know that they're protected and that their security is important as well.
But do you think that will be an issue for your former opponent, as you refer to him, in the general? I mean, this is from the New York Times. Some Democrats who supported you are clearly reluctant to rally behind El-Sayed because many Jewish Democrats in particular were dismayed about the way he criticized the Israeli government and AIPAC committees whose super PAC spent a lot of money to support you. When it comes to the general, are you confident that not just your former opponent, but several of these either self-identified Democratic socialists or more left-leaning opponents can swing to the middle and get those middle-of-the-road independent voters, which are really the only votes up for grabs in so many places that are so close?
Well, I hope you don't mind. I'm drinking my cola.
No, please.
You know, it's the good stuff, right? But it's a good question. You know, I think the nominee's going to be able to, you know, he knows what he was doing, just as I knew what I was doing. I mean, I can only speak to, you know, my campaign, right? Because I was living and breathing it. I mean, I don't want to get in it all. I'm not a big speculator of somebody else's internal thinking. I think we get into a lot of that and it gets negative. But My beliefs were fully on display. I was not hiding from them. I want a two-state solution. I, want a Palestinian state. I want dignity for Lebanon and Syria. And I also, want to see a Jewish state that is deeply persecuted continue to be supported. I'm really honestly proud of my record in the Congress. On these Middle East issues, I'm co-chair of the Congressional Task Force on Hostages alongside French Hill, who's a Republican from Arkansas. We coordinated regularly with the hostages held in the families of the hostages held in the Hamas tunnels. That was a brutal situation. Look, all Americans want long-term peace. I don't think that's, hard to come by. And, again, I don't know who these handful of thousands of voters are, in this primary. The way I look at the primary, I think Abdul won. He got more votes, and Democrats like Democrats, and then in terms of this general election, he's got all his, back of the office, political wizards and people who are going to give him advice, and he's going to have advice. And, Gary Peters, Alyssa Slotkin, our senator, soon to be senior senator, she's going to be campaigning alongside Abdul. She's, now going to be our senior senator, and that's just, I'm on my way out, and of the office that I love to hold, but I'm okay with that, and I'm going to help the congressional tickets and do whatever anyone else wants me to do. I'm just happy to be on the team. Honestly, I love this country. I love American democracy. I love fighting for people to make government work for them. It's unbelievable how many people need access to Social Security, disability, and Medicaid, and these programs that, everyone wants to be fair and accessible. Full funding for special education, right? Sorry to go on, but
that's okay. We're going to let our colleague Abby.
I'm going to have a swig of my beverage of choice, and then we're going to bring in Abby here as a question. Abby Livingston has a question for you, too.
We both will. All right, Abby, it's on you.
So, Congresswoman, the race had barely been called, and you were out of the gate endorsing Dr. El-Sayed, and you're on television having your morning Coke, making the case for him and the Democrats. But this is one of the roughest Senate primaries I've ever seen among Democrats. It was personally rough. Obviously, Israel and Gaza is a tough issue. I sometimes find supporters have a harder time coming into the fold than the actual candidate who lost. Are you confident the entire Democratic coalition can show up after such a rough primary?
I just am setting the tone for myself, okay, and the people around me. I mean, I will say that there's a lot of energy for Democrats right now. We've got Jocelyn Benson as our gubernatorial candidate, and she's doing a great job. And, folks are excited about her. I mean, there's some just, general enthusiasm from Detroit to Muskegon and on. But I will tell you, Abby, we call it pop in Michigan. Okay, so
excuse me.
Yes, not soda.
I'm a good Texan. It's a Coke, and even if it's Dr. Pepper.
And look, I don't want to be all Pollyanna. I mean, politics is a blood sport, okay? I knew what I was signing up for when I put up my hand to run in this primary. I knew it was going to be a primary. Congresswoman Hillary Scholten and I, spent a lot of time chewing on it. She was a very close ally of mine in this race. She was with me on election night. And, we knew it was. And then she said, Haley, the reason you do these primaries, I've had a few of them, okay? I had one with Andy Levin in 2022, and that one was major. I mean, oh my gosh, the scion of Michigan Democratic politics. Now that one I won by 20 points. I mean, this is just American democracy. But Hillary did say to me, she said, look, you know how to do these primaries, you know how to bring people together when it's over. So I'm just doing it in the Haley way, I guess, in my way, not to talk about myself in third person.
I love that, though. That's good.
I mean, I'm just...
David does it all the time. It's fine. I come in and, it's David Gura wants this, David Gura wants that.
Thank you, guys.
Let me look beyond.
David Gura has a question.
Let me look ahead to the challenge that Dr. El-Sayed's going to face here, and that's from Mike Rogers, the former congressman, and he talked about sort of how he sees this campaign playing out. Let's play a little sound from him, and I'll ask you about sort of the path forward here vis-a-vis that coming up.
To the vast majority of people across Michigan who do not want to throw their support behind a campaign filled with anger, divisiveness, calls for violence, and the views that are out of touch with your values, well, you have a home with us. The fight is far greater than just left versus right. The fight is for the very soul of our nation.
There's a congressman, former congressman, sitting on a couch with his wife making that case. How do you respond to that? The way the Republicans are painting this is an example of there being an extremist candidate versus the more traditional American candidate. I mean, there's a lot of invective and insinuation here in the comments we've heard from, yes, Congressman Rogers, but from the president as well. What is your counsel for how Democrats in Michigan should respond to that?
Look, the parties exist, and Mike is in the MAGA Republican wing, and he's got to, answer for how he's going to lower costs for people, how he's going to deal with their rising healthcare costs. I'm going to tell you right now, everywhere I turn, I'm meeting, amazing Michiganders. I still am, because they just saw me all over their TV, for the last handful of months. And there's joy here for sure. Detroit's on the rise, Motor City's on the rise, but folks are, they're getting less money. I really mean that. I talked to people who've been unemployed on occasion. Actually, there was a gal who just brought me DoorDash, and we had a whole big confab last night about her situation. She was all happy. She's resilient, but she's like, I've been out of work for a year, and she had a stroke, a couple of years ago in 2021, and just trying to kind of connect in. And I know that's her individual story, but that individual story matters so very much, right? I mean, and that's always what I tried to do as a rep, is just, help that one person, and do it in ones and twos, and that works. So I think when you ask me that question about Rogers, he's got to figure out what case he's making to people on what he's going to do for them. I'm not out here trying to give him advice. That's not my industry or my profession really. But, I did want to answer. And, Abdul has come out of a major rough primary. And, and look, he's going to be out there making, his case to voters too. It seems like he knew how to do it, because he just came out of this big one. So I don't, there's certainly some questions, and voters will start voting in about a month's time. We get early vote here. So we'll see. And pay attention to the votes that get cast. We just have so much prognosticating in American politics. I mean, people were calling this one. I voted on at my polling location on primary day, and they were calling my race as I was coming out. Now, there was a swarm of press. Congresswoman, you're down 15 points. What are you going to do? I said, whoa, let's just get, I'm in this mode. Abdul says he's not a socialist. I condemn socialism, this and that. Again, not trying to, I don't really know Rogers. Okay. He went to Florida. I never served with him. Seems like he made a bunch of money. He's, like you said, he's sitting on the couch. So, maybe he's trying to go to the Senate now.
All right. Well, let me ask you about what you just referenced, where you're saying, I'm not a socialist. You said Mike Rogers needs to decide what he's for, but there's a little bit of that within the Democratic Party right now, right? We've got this next phase in the progressive versus moderate fight that's coming up, particularly in Wisconsin. You've been talking to us about how long you've been in Democratic politics, all your successes. You flipped the seat, you served your constituents, but you lost. Do you think that the Democratic Party is really taking these lessons to heart, or do you think they're continually making the same mistakes, especially in these primaries?
I wouldn't go into any of that. I mean, honestly, I think that we've just got this incredible, race that was just had. I think my coalition is awesome. I'm really proud of it. I won Detroit by 67% of the vote, but I wouldn't be getting into mistakes. I mean, people just want health care. Okay. I mean, I want to fix government. I want to make government services work better for people. I was chief of staff on the U.S. Auto Rescue. It was an emergency situation. My goodness gracious, that worked really well. You know, an $80 billion managed bankruptcy of General Motors and Chrysler, saving 200,000 Michigan jobs, of which we were repaid on interest as the, government, as the American taxpayer was repaid on interest. I'm looking at our debt and our deficit, and I'm thinking, okay, well, why is our debt growing faster than our gross domestic product? Why is it growing faster than our economy? I want to lessen our dependence on China to create jobs and lower costs. We got to focus on critical minerals. I did that with the CHIPS Act. I'm a voice in the Democratic Party saying those things. And I think sometimes I get why you're asking the question, but one person doesn't define the Democratic Party. We are a big group. The Republicans are a big group. And then there's this independent chunk that just kind of swings. And we got to, honestly, at the end of my primary, I was saying, no American is my enemy. Truly, I just, look, I'm there in the Congress. I talk to everybody, except for the one from Georgia. Okay. But I don't want to poke her because she's tempestuous and she resigned. Okay. But everyone else was by and large, you could talk to them. Duly elected member of Congress. I came in, I'd never served in Congress, and I got my first bill signed for early childhood education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Christmas Eve, 2019, signed by Trump. A week after the first impeachment, he still signed it. Hey, that's America, baby.
Congressman,
we're going to leave it there. That's America, baby. I think it's a good way to leave. Really
Thank
great
you
to
for
speak
coming
with you.
on.